I love it.
Ask Mike J. He plays it close to the vest, and if anybody can say what's on their mind, it is definitely Mike J. Schaefer.
Joining us now from Huskers247. What's up, Schaefer?
Oh, sorry. I had some technical issues still having, but it should be good.
God, your delivery for a guy that's pretty straightforward is so disarming. Right? I mean, he's cooked me on this show before, so I shouldn't say that. But this guy, he's like, well, my bad. I couldn't get it to. And so then you can't even like really poke fun at him because he already ate it.
I was gonna poke fun at you. Gonna be like,
that's great. Of course you would.
The DB understands technological issues. So.
Of course, anytime you get a chance to bus roll me, I'm the orbit of the show. Shafe, I just getting bus rolled. How did
that's a good reference? Metro Transit, we love them.
I'm curious, Mike J, because sometimes you're kind of an eye roll guy. Sometimes you will get in the weeds. It just depends. How did Coach Rhule's tweet land with you? With the too many folks have profited off the demise. Their time is over.
Well, do you want like a real answer? Or
I
would
listen. There's only one Mike J, right? I mean, you're very unique in this format.
Let's get the truth. What do we got?
I'm curious.
Question the timing of the tweet.
Something that was clearly bugging him.
Yeah, sure. And I want to be sensitive to the fact that I don't know what it is. Like none of us necessarily know what it. Well, I shouldn't say none of us, but more than likely, most of us don't know what exactly prompted said tweet, what it is related to, how it's necessarily related to Nebraska football, why it makes the most sense to make this tweet on June 30th, all of those things. So it's one of those where you read it, you try to think about it, you wonder if it relates to anything that you're doing, you're wondering if it relates to anything that you care about at all. Like it's Twitter and
everybody's like scrubbing their social media.
Sure.
You're like, what are we talking about?
And we often ascribe too much value to 140 characters at a time. So, I didn't know what it was about. Frankly, again, being June 30th, it's hard to know whether it should be anything anyone needs to care about that much. But he felt it necessary to put it out there. Maybe he'll get asked about it in Las Vegas here in a month or before then. I'm not sure. I'm not sure that it should really matter to me as a media person or to fans or whatever else. I mean, it's Twitter. Like, again, we don't have to put as much value on it as we often do.
I just cared about if he's seen any great whites up there at the Cape. Like, that's really what I wanted to know. Have there been any shark sightings? I don't know what he's talking about. I did think, though, like if
Sounds like he thinks there's been some sharks in the water.
If I had to guess, I do think it was more on the local scale than national. Because, I get the Wasserman stuff. That's kind of like water under the bridge. And he gets it and he does enough stuff nationally. And is it on the heels of what's happening with recruiting when it was pretty much doom and gloom in the forecast a couple of weeks ago? Like that could be a thing too.
Let's say that it's local, and let's say that it's about the idea that people have profited off of the negative coverage of Nebraska football. Like let's say that's the basis of any of this. Why is that tweet being made on June 30th?
Wow.
Yeah. It's a fair question.
Because you picked up 2 offensive line commitments? Like, is it related to recruiting at all?
I think he's got.
I can't imagine that it is.
He's for sure got 2 more, I think, coming.
Sure. Yeah, I feel pretty good about that too. But the IB, like, he doesn't strike me as someone who's puffing his chest out because they're now up to either 11
and
or
that's not really
10
his
commitments.
style. I don't know. Something's probably bugging him.
Yeah, and so that's why I don't want to put too much on it, and I really don't want to analyze it, because if it is about the local media coverage, I mean, they won 6 games for the first time in 8 years last year. Like, let's at least acknowledge that if it's been doom and gloom and people have profited off of negativity, it's because there hasn't been a lot of sunshine to go around these parts. So, I mean, like, And that's why I don't want to spend a lot of time digging into it, because I don't know. I mean, he can answer this if he wants to put more value on his own tweet at some point, or if somebody asks him to explain it. But it just felt odd, and the timing of it being in June felt odd. Like, maybe that's the sort of tweet that gets made. Even then, it'd be a weird distraction if you start off, 4-0 if a win over Michigan or whatever it is. I don't know. That's why I don't have any real idea as to what the substance of that tweet is about. I just can't imagine, as excited as they are about getting Claude Mpouma, and they should be excited. They haven't gotten a lot of offensive linemen like him that I can think of, even just in the 14 years that I've been covering recruiting. But I don't know that that's a reason for that sort of tweet, if it's what I think it's about. But it could be about anything else entirely. Maybe he put a line in a book and it really stood out to him.
You know what's funny is
that wouldn't surprise. I know
you're
correct. There's a little sarcasm in there, but that wouldn't surprise me either. I mean, you just never know. He's always thinking.
I mean, he might have been reading some more Rudyard Kipling and decided he thought like that quote, because that's what he did last year, right?
He's just constantly thinking.
I didn't think it, for what it's worth, and I know you don't want to stick too long in this, Schaefer, and so we'll move on, but I didn't think it had anything to do with the media. I thought he was talking about, like, the vultures around recruiting, like all the people that are preying on kids.
Yeah, could be.
And, like,
so initially,
that's what I thought.
Initially, that's what I thought.
Was that, hey, it's about he's seen too many of these recruitments and these guys be impacted one way or another because – they're focusing on, like, oh, well, if you don't do this and if you don't sign this deal, and, like,
I thought, like, Obot. I thought, like, there's a lot of guys that I think people have tried to use the negative.
I mean, I thought,
slant
like,
towards Nebraska,
the Charmar Brown stuff. Like, I thought, like, that's where my mind went originally, was just, hey,
you're probably right.
The recruiting thing.
I hate to say that because you're not very.
And when he says their time is over, it's like, hey, relationships are going to win. At the end of the day, relationships are going to win.
I like that.
That's what I thought it was about.
Yeah, and that could be entirely what it is. Like I said, it was, as soon as I saw it, I knew it was going to be a discussion that I was uncomfortable with, because none of us can speak for whatever the frame of mind was when he made that tweet, and it's not like there's a media availability right around the corner where he's going to explain it. So I didn't know how to take it. I think Ravi's explanation makes sense to a degree. It also it strikes me as out of character from someone who often is, for as much as Matt Rhule talks, there's generally always a purpose and a reason and something behind the message, and the message might not be aimed directly to who's receiving it, but someone else that might be listening in on it. So, he's a very careful communicator. And so there's, I'm sure, a point to it. I just don't know to whom it's being directed.
Well, shoot, where was your reassurance the other day when I asked you if he was just messing with me? I felt like you were making a lot of jokes over there, Mike.
I thought my comment about how it was just your back was pretty spot on, but you just glossed right over that one.
Oh, because I was terrified. I was like, if he's right, doesn't make me feel any better. He's like, well, let's talk recruiting, man. He's got a chance to hit a hot streak and it might have been you. Yeah, it had to be where you said, gosh, in a couple of weeks, we could be sitting at 12, 13 guys. This could change in a hurry. And you very well may be right here in the next handful of days with where Nebraska ends up. Let's start with O-line, because he's got 2 at premium positions in the fold.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like what they've done with this offensive line class. I mean, Rex Waterman was someone that I kind of felt early on they had a great shot with. And, Claude Mpouma, Waterman was the first to commit, obviously, and then followed by Hayden Ainsworth, and then the 2 yesterday with Leon Noyle and Claude Mpouma. But Mpouma is such a big one to me because of almost the fact that Nebraska never gets this type of offensive tackle, like just a big NFL traitsy, really raw. Like, this is someone that's going to require a little bit more time, but from talking with offensive line coaches, they almost love getting players like this because they don't have bad habits that you have to coach out of them, that they're usually coming to you in such a way that they have to soak up everything that you're telling them because they don't know anything else. They don't have years of playing tackle and different offensive line coaches teaching them different things. And so I think with Mpouma, that's sort of exciting in that regard. But then also, I mean, this is a guy that, again, has NFL traits and things that you can't teach in terms of his size and overall athleticism. I love the athletic profile here. He's going to have to learn how to play with power, and that's where getting him into a strength and conditioning program and with the nutritionists and really building up his body and then turning him loose with the guys that are going to be working with him on the offensive line. I mean, you're essentially just given the framework of what could be a potential cornerstone left tackle, and you get to sort of build it as you want under your own real, plan. And so I think that's pretty exciting. And to be able to do that while beating out Auburn and Florida, which as recently as Friday, I was in a conversation with someone who would absolutely know. I mean, Auburn was way out ahead of Nebraska here. And Matt Rhule did what Matt Rhule generally does the best, which is he gets on the phone with these recruits and he explains to them why he feels like Nebraska is a strong fit for them, what Nebraska can offer, why this decision should boil down to, where you're going to be comfortable and where you can get the most out of for where you want to go. And when he's had those conversations, whether it was Mpouma over the weekend, Leon Noyle was another one who received the Matt Rhule phone call. I go back to last December. Jeremiah Jones was one of those recipients of it on signing day when he was almost going to flip to Missouri. And Matt Rhule called and calmed him down about, what the future was going to look like for Nebraska and why he should continue to believe in what made him commit in the first place. I mean, he's got a track record of being able to do this. And so they went from Friday, me thinking like this is Auburn. I mean, with the amount of money that Auburn had planned to invest into it and the relationship that they had built over the weekend, just kept hearing that Nebraska was making its move, and eventually the other two were pulling out entirely because Nebraska had solidified its spot.
You guys both know, low key, I keep receipts and I'm fairly petty. I screenshot 4 DMs because 2 days ago, or was it yesterday, I said, quietly, Coach Rhule is a really good closer, right?
Oh, yeah.
And this was on the heels of them not getting a couple of big guys down the stretch. And some folks let me know that I had logged on to the Homer Network. And I'm like, listen, 3 of the 4 I didn't respond to. But the one guy, I'm like, listen, I'd rather be right than well-liked. And I'm just telling you, I'm not going to say anything about Coach Rhule for the sake of he and I's relationship. Like, I'd rather be right. Like, that guy can close. I've seen it. Like, I know how he acts. I know what he thinks. And I know his level of authenticity. Like, the guy, he can close. If it's whenever he gets ready, that guy can close.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard it from other coaches that have been, sitting right there listening to only one side of the phone call, but knowing what the other one was largely sounding like because they were privy to watching him go to work. I think he is unquestionably the best head coach in terms of the actual recruitment side of it, not necessarily the organization or all of that, but just like him in the conversation part of it, by far the best. I mean, compared to Frost and Riley and Pauline, and it's not like that's some sort of substantial bar to clear, but he's not like a figurehead in recruiting. He's very, very involved in it. And he's often, a really important tool that they can use. Like, I don't think that they just do this all the time, but when they know that he can establish in a relationship and when he's able to get on the phone with Claude Mpouma, or he did it with Danny Odom or whatever, and he just sells them on why he's that excited about Nebraska. Not why they should be, but what he's excited about.
That's the thing
he sees about Nebraska.
That is the number one thing right there, Schaefer.
He doesn't tell them why they should be excited.
Telling you.
He shows them or explains to them what he is seeing from his eyes and where he thinks this thing is going to go. That is such a better form of communication than someone just telling you, oh, you're going to love it. We have this, we have that, we have, you're going to be great here, blah, blah, blah.
I can't stress how important that is.
Like.
That's what I hang my hat on. That's what I gravitated towards early on. His affinity for this place and what it is and what it could be, and him not wavering, why he loves why he loves this place so much. Like, that's why I'm in. Like, this guy's he does not hold back on what this place can and will mean. So I'm in, right? There's
Well,
nothing to not like about that.
and
And
then
he's being authentic.
and then it doesn't feel like a sales pitch, right? Like that's the big difference when I hear you explain that difference, Shafe, is when somebody's telling me like, oh, this is why you should do this, this, and this, that feels like a sales pitch. Whereas if somebody's like, hey, this is why I love this place, you do what's best for you, but like I'm just gonna tell you my perspective, that feels a lot more relational and a little bit more authentic than trying to be like, oh, well, we've got the best of this and the best of this. It's like, well, you've been on campus, you already have seen that. I don't have to tell you we've got the best facility in the country. You've seen a bunch of national guys come in and tell you that this is the best facility in the country and you saw it for yourself. I don't have to tell you that the nutrition's on point. You've been to the training table. Like that to me makes such a huge difference between like being salesy and just like being a part of somebody's life.
Yeah, I'm absolutely. It transcends, and the message cuts through. I mean, these guys that he does this with, Mpouma, Jones, Odom, like they're being recruited by other great recruiters. And they also have been in the process long enough that they have a BS detector and they know when someone is just sort of trying to sell them something. And so he cuts through that really well.
I mean, you guys, the only time, well, he's probably been mad at me more than this, but I've kind of intimated at this story, whether it's Danny Collins at Minnesota or what's his buckets, the deep Tressel at Wisconsin or LeVar Woods at Iowa. Like, I'm genuinely concerned about the recruitment of the young guy in our house. And I wanted to tell, I said to coach, I didn't want to, I told Coach Rhule, I said, listen, man, if you want him, you gotta go get him. And he's like, listen, I'm trying to respect you. So don't come knocking on my door all huffy puffy. Like, I'm trying to respect the relationship. And I said, don't worry about me. And he like bristled up. He's like, close. I'll close on his ass with or without you. And he hung up the phone, Shafe. Like, he was pissed. And I won't forget that conversation because it was dicey for a couple of weeks where, we weren't like interacting. I'm like, this dude is pretty mad. And like, sure enough, it's
a couple weeks later,
closing time. Like, I was at wit's end. I was just afraid, right? I'm like, these guys are so worried about the relationship and respect. Like, don't, like, just do what you normally would do and let the chips fall where they may. And he's like, yeah, I'll close his ass with or without you. Click. I was like, hello? 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 I was like, oh, shoot. I ain't calling back. Let's see. But yeah, I like, he's very passionate about this place. And I think that's one of the things that these guys that they feel when they're on campus and they spend time. You know how close he was to getting Sharmar Brown, and they had no business even being in the discussion.
I know what led up to that day, and I know, it felt like they were 15 miles behind everybody else.
They had no business even being in the hunt, and somehow they got there. So I like he's pretty off. It just starts with his authenticity, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's, people want genuine. They want to trust and believe, especially if they're going to uproot themselves and move somewhere and take a chance. They want to believe in what they're taking a chance in. And I do think one of Matt Rhule's tools in his toolbox is he can get you to believe, not just in him or in Nebraska, but in your own belief in him in Nebraska. Like, I think that he has that kind of ability to sell with rhetoric. Now, the big thing is, how do you follow it up and everything else? And that's going to be a big part of the conversation for 2025. I mean, I know myself going into the last stage of the last visit weekend, just looking at where things were at, it was like, they have to close. Like, they didn't have a lot of outs here. You had to close Danny Odom because there was no other Danny Odom on your board. You had to close Claude Mpouma because that was the best offensive tackle that you had a shot with. And they're very much, I think, in the mindset over there that if they're not getting the higher end of their board, they are not dipping down just to take someone. I mean, that is a huge shift in the previous couple years. And I don't have to name names, but I think you guys can easily go through some of these classes and be like, okay, well, This was someone that they liked from an evaluation standpoint, but wasn't the highest on their board, but they could get him. They got to check a number off the box and they moved on. There's no need to do that anymore. And with 105 cap or whatever it's going to be in the future, you have that on the back end of it, but you also know you have the transfer portal. And I think they like what they have on their roster. So why do they have to just go get somebody to make it look good in a recruiting ranking service? That's not what they're trying to do.
So you brought up two really good points there that I think matter a lot, because that's the question we always get, right? Is, well, do they actually like these guys? Are they just filling spots or whatever? One, and I've given this number before, you got 95 guys in this roster that are sophomore, redshirt freshman, or freshmen. So you don't need that many guys to start. You don't need to fill spots to start with. Second, I think they got really comfortable in this last transfer cycle with the guys they brought in of being like, oh, we feel like we have a good grasp on filling holes this way. We don't have to take flyers on guys in high school.
Yeah, and it's also the circumstance of they changed over that staff, so the relationships weren't going to be as strong for 26. I think they knew that they were going to be building towards 2027 a little bit more than the 26 from the high school standpoint. It allows them to have flexibility when they get to December, depending on how the 2025 season goes, as to what type of portal year they want to have. Do they have to go all in on immediate answers, or do they have answers on their roster so they're able to just continue to backfill with guys that intrigue them, that they want to try to develop, that they think would be good pieces or good role guys or whatever. I mean, it's what you want, right? They're not playing poker where they need the last card to get the inside part of a straight. Like they have a lot of outs. They have a lot of outs going into this and how they're building this roster. I think that's a good thing. And then to be able to close on some of the top end guys after having some struggle getting to June. I mean, June has went exceptionally well. It was a lead up to June where you're seeing some of these top players that you wanted coming off of the board that you're not even getting in for official visits. But that was sort of where the rough seas were. But now, I mean, they're coming out of this on the other side of it. They have a class that I think they feel pretty good about. And then they're going to get into potentially being able to flip some of those people that they didn't get the visits for if they go have a good season in 2025.
Yeah, the circling back and could they get to 16 or 17 would be fascinating, because they don't have to. They would just be able to, which is
would be 100% at their discretion of, we want a defensive lineman and we want this defensive lineman.
Yep.
We don't want a defensive lineman. We want this guy from St. Louis or this guy from Miami or that guy from North Carolina.
I'm cheering for that like crazy, Schaefer, because I've been one of these guys that for months has said the philosophy in which they're recruiting under, you want them thinking this way, because if they start winning, it just pays more dividends. They don't have to recalibrate or readjust, because the core of what they do is the core of what they do. They evaluate, they find, they believe in their development. So any winning they do will just be fruit that they've bared. It won't be, well, God, we got to replant, retill, revamp. Like they rolled the dice bet on themselves by staying the course of who they are. And it could pay dividends, man. And it's hard to get people to buy into that when guys are telling them no at the last minute. But for them to not be deterred or to waver, I think even grew my affinity more for the process, because they're going to stand their ground.
Well, and then the other thing to remember is that they're going to get into this part of the season. There's still months to go before anyone signs. I mean, I think we've kind of talked ourselves into, okay, the class that you have at the end of June, beginning of July, like that's what this is going to look like when you sign it in December. And that's not necessarily true. And on top of it, I think when we get to what likely going to be an insane cycle of coaching changes, the position coaches and relationships and stuff is going to get blown up in November. And Nebraska leaving outs, having flexibility, maintaining relationships, not writing people off just because they chose to commit somewhere else. That's going to pay off for them in November should they maintain that flexibility. And it gives Pat Stewart an opportunity to continue to grow into his role and to have a better feeling for things. You get to see what you have on the roster. I mean, the approach makes a ton of sense.
Quietly, do you know what else I like? I'm one of those guys that was kind of there. I wasn't out on an island, so I don't want to do that. But the 500
You've
mile.
often been out in space, just kind of floating.
Well, we're not hitting case kings in one outer, Schaefer. I mean, the winning hand, okay? But I've said this for probably, you guys know this, and Schaefer, you're a day oneer. The 500-mile radius was never a huge, I thought it was a little overstated, right? I think, yeah, I just thought we made too big of a deal. And I'm not saying I want to be dismissive of like the Kansas City area or St. Louis or some particular regions, but I do like the fact that Nebraska's shown it's not so much about specific numbers as much about where they can make hay and where their interests lie, right? That you can see Kansas City is important. You can see St. Louis is important. You can see Miami is important. You can see pockets of Texas are important. You can see some parts in the Northeast. It doesn't have to be, man, we've got to lock such and such and such and such up. And they're finding a way to make that work. That part I like because I've never been a 500-mile radius guy.
Yeah, and I don't know that it was ever like, oh, we need X amount of our recruits to come from here. A lot of it was, hey, there's talent that we think can help us. Let's go get it, whether it's in Castle Rock, Colorado, or
how do we
Sioux
best
City,
utilize
Iowa.
our resources?
Right. And then, on top of it, some of the success you're having in Florida is because a guy like Ja'Cory Barney came in as a freshman and is playing well. Mm-hmm. A guy like Willis McGahee and Vincent Shavers have opportunities in their second year to really cement defensive spots and really be part of the rotation. I mean, when we talk about the Pied Piper effect, you got to have guys that come from the area that are representing on television, and like when they come back, or if you're going through their school, that their jersey number is displayed in a way that they're at Nebraska, they're having success. It makes it easier to go into Miami. It makes it easier to go into Florida. Larry Miles makes his decision later today. And if you're Larry Miles and you look at what happened with Ja'Cory Barney and you think, hey, like that's what a slot receiver can sort of do in Nebraska and have that kind of impact. I'm probably a better receiver, like straight receiver, than Ja'Cory Barney was by the time he got to college because he had to do all this other stuff. There's a great opportunity for me in Nebraska. So I so much of it also in pockets when it's further outside the 500-mile radius is you have examples of these guys having success in Nebraska. And can I see myself having success there too? Because a guy that I know that was a couple years older than me is having success there. I mean, that's a huge part of this whole thing.
Chafe, last thing from me here. You mentioned Larry Miles making his decision this afternoon. You've got Darian Jones at the end of the week.
Calvin Thomas coming up.
Are there any other guys that you know of with impending decisions that could impact Nebraska here within the next few days?
Yeah, I mean, the other big one that you guys haven't mentioned is on July 3rd, Devin Jackson makes his announcement. I want to say it's 11 a.m. Central Time. Hearing a lot of Oregon, but also yesterday, there were a lot of whispers about Nebraska that was coming out of that 7-on-7 deal too. And not just because they got Danny Odom and Trey Taylor was down there throwing to Larry Miles, but I think there's some coaching staff that think Nebraska is involved in that one and will be involved until, whatever Devin Jackson says. So I know there's some momentum for Oregon there, but I think Nebraska is going to be involved in that. They definitely want a safety. He's on the high end of the board, and, we'll see. I think the connection to Danny Odom does matter, and maybe we'll get another patented Matt Rhule phone call that we hear about on the back end of this.
Yeah. If they, out of those four, what would your gut say? How many do they land?
I feel good about at least two. I don't think they're going to go 4 for 4, but I think they could get 2, and in a perfect world, they could get 3. I mean, they've done a nice job of, like I said, being flexible and making sure that these recruits know, even after they've left their visit, that they had a good time and that Nebraska's here for them if they're interested.
Hey, Mike J. Well, how I'm curious here about the last weekend in September with the Steelers and the Vikings. We have the Bengals right before that, the Falcons, the Bears. Like, how good do you feel about you guys this year? Because my mood is not very good right now with the Steelers, and I don't want to have you on that the week after and you've hung a 40 spot on us. Like, how are you feeling about your Vikings?
I think that they have a terrific roster, and I have
An
no
early
idea.
game too, Schaefer. Are you making me breakfast, or like what are we doing on the 26th?
I was going to see if you wanted to just fire up your Blackstone, and I would come over and sit politely and eat and,
I thought
watch
you
as
were
Aaron Rodgers tanks another season for another team.
I'm good on it. He's just the better cleaner. That thing is a nightmare. Yuck.
Is that thing at Minnesota?
No,
no, that's in.
Oh, okay.
It's 8:30.
Yeah.
Oh, that's early. That's
Minnesota has back-to-back games over in Europe, England. I don't know. One of them's in Scotland, maybe.
It's the UK tech.
Yeah, for as much as I know about American history, I know very little explanation whatsoever why it's called the UK, and then we also split them out into countries, but then their voting block is different. I don't understand any of it. That's why they fought a war that we get to celebrate Independence Day here in a couple of days, that we don't have to care about European or United Kingdom history, right?
Yeah. Schaefer, let me ask you something real quick, random college football.
That wasn't random enough.
That was pretty random. That was really random. It was selfish too, with a Vikings and Steelers reference.
I had no idea where you were going.
As it relates to how the final picture looks in college football, for you, which game is more important in the week span? Is it Iowa State, K-State, or LSU and Clemson?
I think it's LSU Clemson. I really do, because I just don't know. The Big 12 feels like a one bid league. I don't know which of the teams is going to come out of that. So that game could be really important, but I think
it seems like an elimination game, because the easy answer would be LSU Clemson. I'm not sure, because both those schools will have
still
other
make the
opportunities.
playoff
if
they lose that game.
So I'm just curious on the perspective.
Yeah, I don't know that I feel so confident about either Kansas State or Iowa State that the winner of that would just have it on easy street the rest of the way. I don't know what to do
what
with
if
the Big
Iowa
12.
State gets K-State and Iowa in those first 3 weeks?
It would be cause for celebration for them.
My Rocco Beck stock is cashing in, baby.
How many wins do they have over Iowa in the last 15 years?
2.
They have like a million close losses.
Campbell is 2, and he's only got 2 wins against
7 or something.
He's only got 2 against Kirk.
Yeah, like Nebraska Iowa State fans handshake meme over just feeling sad every time they play Iowa and inexplicably lose the game.
If I'm going to keep saying this until I'm not nervous anymore, Nebraska has got to find a way to beat Minnesota and Iowa in the same season. I don't
love that trip to Minnesota. I know that much.
Fudge.
And I don't even think the Gophers are that good, but
Iowa State has won 2 of the last 3.
They have.
Ooh.
But
those are his 2 wins.
So it's 2 and 7 overall for Campbell. So just 2 of the last 3, not bad.
Thanks for nothing, Mike J. Geez. Not only are your Vikings going to be good, but you're with me on the Gophers too. I actually think they're going to be pretty good, though.
Yeah, I mean, I think they'll be Minnesota good, which is 7-5, 8-4. I don't think they'll be any better than that. They'll have moments where you wonder how they beat anybody, and then they'll have inexplicably one game where they hang around way longer than you think they will. That's PJ Fleck, that's Minnesota, and I think you can just pretty much put that in Sharpie right now.
That's our guy, Mike J. Schaefer, Husker247. Schaefer, enjoy the holiday weekend. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, guys, take care.